Good morning, everyone. We're continuing here in the words of the CHOFETZ CHAIM. And the CHOFETZ CHAIM said yesterday there's three types of cases where you would have thought that perhaps you're allowed to believe the Lashon Hara that you hear. And we're going to have to describe what are the parameters of that. Number one, he said, is if you hear Lashon Hara from someone who's trustworthy like two. Number two is if you are Mesiach Lefituma, someone's telling over a story and casually in the midst of the story, they mention negative words about somebody which seems unintentional and therefore they're not meaning to speak Lashon Hara, but now you learn something negative about them. And third is, if they are Devarim HaNikarim, they are recognizable signs that what is being said about this person is true. So he's going to go now one by one to describe them. Asr Isser L'Kabbalas Lashon Hara, the prohibition of accepting Lashon Hara applies Afilu im shama meishu mehemin la leik kedivei shnei edim. Even if you heard testimony from one person who would be believed like two people because he's such a credible source, nevertheless, you're not allowed to accept the words of Lashon Hara. Now says the CHOFETZ CHAIM, Umasha kesavna le'el b'chal dalet sivhei. If you remember from the 4th chapter, we said something that seems to be a contradiction to this. The mutter legale se'inyan be'atznei l'Rabbi u'le'ish saydei. If Reuven knew something negative about Shimon, he's allowed to reveal this information to Levi or to about Shimon to his Rebbe or to a person that has an influence on Shimon. He can do it privately. Im yeda sheyamin devar kedivei shnei edim. If Reuven knows that the Rebbe is going to believe him like two witnesses because he's credible, so the Rebbe is even allowed to accept the words of Reuven over here, who's speaking negatively about Shimon, and he is allowed, based on those words, he's allowed to accept them, and he can even be upset and despise Shimon for his misbehavior. He can even stay away from him until he sees that Ad Asher Yivad until he knows that Shimon ended up doing tshuva. So over there, what's the reason that we allow the Rebbe to hear Lashon Hara and accept it? Because really it's something that is permitted anyway to speak about the sinful deeds of Shimon. If he didn't do tshuva. This is something that he did, a sin that is so well known amongst Klal Yisrael. You're not allowed to do these things. And he did it in such a way that there's no embarrassment or shame at all. So really, in reality, in such a case, you would be allowed to even speak Lashon Hara deliberately about a person. We try not to. And over here, those sins that it's between you and the Rebbe, you'd be allowed to. You don't have to have any. You don't have to judge him favorably at all in such a case. I'll give you an example. Says the CHOFETZ CHAIM, b'maisa the tuvia b'psachim. There's Gemara in Psachim that says regarding tuvia shehu inyan neuf. There was a whole maisa over there, a story about adultery, and that is something that is well known. You're not allowed to do, and therefore, if you had to judge such a person unfavorably, you're allowed to. Similarly, however, when it comes to something that you're obligated to be done, to judge the person favorably for, like maybe, for example, says the CHOFETZ CHAIM, that maybe Shimon didn't realize that this is really us, so that's why he did what he did wrong. Maybe it happened unintentionally. Or maybe the person who's talking right now is saying things that are just not nice at all, and he's just saying these sweeping, broad statements. Or he wants to speak about Shimon's shortcomings. Like we said above. And he wants to mention the misdeeds of his Shimon's parents, his relatives, or Ma'asav Arishonim. Maybe Shimon's about tshuva. He wants to talk about his negative things he used to do before. This person doesn't have the credibility of two people. What difference does it matter whether this information is true or not? You're not allowed to speak badly about a person because of these things. The Torah says you can't. Rather, you have to judge the chafschos favorably. Like we said previously in the words of the CHOFETZ Chaim. So it's not so clear and not so pashut that you're able to say these words, even if your neman can betray, you're credible like two witnesses. If there's a mitzvah to be done l'chav zchus to judge favorably, that is your first priority, and that's why you would not be able to say over the words of lashon hara. Have a wonderful day.